Looking for real stories that lift you up and light a fire inside? Welcome to Inspire and Impact, the podcast where purpose meets perseverance. This is where transformation begins and your story continues.
Welcome to the Inspire and Impact podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Rosenstein. The show features real conversations with thought leaders, healers, entrepreneurs, and creatives who share the journeys of growth, purpose, and making a meaningful impact. Today, I have the honor of interviewing Dr. Nona Djavid. Dr. Nona, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I always like to start off by asking my guests if they can share a little bit about themselves with the audience so we can have a better context of who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to summarize without going into any kind of story or anything, which I'm sure we'll get to chat about, but I help people sort of create an unreasonable dream life for themselves, a vision at least for it, and then figure out a way to get there. And I think what's really meaningful about my work is that it's not just because I am an expert in it, but it's more so because I have lived it. I've had moments of struggle that have taught me all the ways to have this ability to quantum leap in my own personal life. And I want nothing but more than to be able to share it with other people. So hopefully we'll get to chat about all of those and add some value to everyone's life.
Well, this is really exciting because I'm definitely very interested in learning more about all of this. I mean, when you said unreasonable life, to me, it almost has a little negative connotation there. Can you explain to us, what does that really, what do you mean by unreasonable life?
Yeah, to put it really simply, creating an unreasonable vision for your life or for your business or for your relationship, really it means to go outside of the norm, to go outside of the box, to look within yourself instead of listening to the noise or the consciousness of the world and determining what it is that you want to experience. And it might be completely unreasonable, but extraordinary. That's in parentheses, but unreasonable for where you are sitting right now. So, as an example, I really had an unreasonable vision for my life, including my relationship, my business, the kind of impact that I wanted to create out in the world. And I remember being completely burnt out and depressed. And in the moment, and there's this particular moment I'm thinking about is when I'd just been married. I'd had my first child and I had a successful business. On paper, everything looked amazing. Like all the things you're supposed to be doing with your life, I had done it with my life. By standards of the consciousness of the world, media, my parents, culture, everything else pretty successful. Except I remember put my son to take a nap. Then I took a call with my team members, 13 of them, went over some numbers. Everything was good. Then I walked myself to the closet, shut down the door, shut down the lights, and I started sobbing because what I had built in my life was not what my soul truly desired to experience. I had sort of built a prison or a jail where I felt completely trapped, was depressed. The usual forms of success, they were not satisfying to me. They were not fulfilling to me. And I didn't have the impact that I wanted to make out in the world. So while I was in that closet, I had a vision for this life that seemed completely out there. I want to live bicontinentally. I want to learn a new language. I want to world school my kids and I want to be in a loving relationship. Back then, I had one child. I'm stuck to my business. I couldn't really go anywhere. My marriage wasn't working. So from where I was sitting, this vision or this dream that I had, this potential that I thought I could have, seemed completely unreasonable but extraordinary, right? So once I made a decision to walk out of the closet, I also made the decision that I was going to continue to say yes to this unreasonable vision for life, for business, for relationship, for my health, for contribution, instead of questioning what is how are you going to do that? That's impossible. It's not, you're not worthy of it. You're not deserving. Who do you know that's even done this life, or whatever the case may have been? And so to continue to tap into what might be an unreasonable life, I had to continue to say yes to the vision. And so now looking back, and that was the first time really that I did things differently outside the box instead of just checking off a list of what the world told me was going to be, was going to make me feel better.
Well, I mean, that sounds really amazing, but like, I'm just very curious to know, like, how did you get from like point A to point B? Did you like read a book like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, or did you create a vision board, or do you have a coach, or all the above?
Yeah. So this was really, my biggest mentor was life, throwing me into situations where I've done all of those things, Daniel, right? I think probably most of your audience is either familiar with or has had, whether it's mentors, Think and Grow Rich, Joe Dispenza, like the list goes on and on and on. And we've done all of those things. But if you're not ready to make a change, you're not going to make a change. And looking back, that particular moment while I was in the closet was a really pivotal moment in my life, because that's when I made the decision that I was going to do things differently. So it actually became less about looking for external factors like the next coach, the next book, the next program. And it became more about what I came here to do. So the internal voice became louder as I allowed it. And the other thing I will say is I don't want people to think that this was an overnight decision. I stayed in that marriage for many years after. I ended up having another child, but in the decade after, I was able to make the changes that I needed to make by saying yes to the vision that seemed completely out of reach over and over and over again on a daily basis. And then, Daniel, when I look back at my life and I see my relationship now, I did end up getting divorced. There's all these things that actually happened. So I definitely don't want to give the impression that this was an overnight situation. There's a lot of struggle, a lot of learning, a lot of failure, a lot of doubt in this process. But looking back, I can tell you, and this is what I've developed over the past decade or so, I've developed the exact 4 steps that I have taken every single time I have been able to quantum jump from one area of life, one area in business, one area in success, and quantum jump into something that was drastically different, to be able to up level my life in business and life in relationship. There are always 4 levels that are 4 steps that are involved. And the very first step in this process is knowing exactly where you're going to jump to. Like, where are you landing, or where are you flying to, even better? What's that unreasonable vision that you have for the things that you want to create? Putting that as the foundation of everything, and then following through with the rest of it.
Thank you so much for being so transparent, because some coaches online on social media, they make it seem like you just push a button and you just like manifest, all your dreams in 2 seconds.
Bitch, tell me where that button is.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm curious to know. I think I'll definitely like to know more about your 4-step process. And I think that's really amazing. You said you can apply it to all different areas of your life. So it's not just like a 4-step process to like building your business, or 4-step process for having a good relationship, but like you're saying in all areas. That's amazing. I actually never heard of that before, because usually people, like, they focus on one area. It's either business or relationships, or another area. And you're saying that it can be applied to that. So that's really fantastic. That's really amazing. And a little bit about me, it's like I'm a life coach myself, and I've been in the industry for 30 years. So I've read a lot of books like yourself, and programs and coaches and yada, yada, and this. So I'm kind of aware of what's out there. Obviously I don't know everything, but I haven't heard of your 4-step process until now. And it sounds like really interesting. So, can I ask you though? Because a lot of the listeners, there are probably a lot of people out there that feel stuck in their lives. Like you said, like when you were before, where maybe, you're not satisfied with your job. There's a lot of people out there that, or they don't like the relationships they're in, or they don't have a relationship. and they feel confused. They don't know where to go. Can you maybe give some advice to people in the audience? Like, what's like the first step? Like if somebody has doubt, confusion, or a feeling of hopelessness, they don't know what to do. Cause like you mentioned, like the first step of your process is like knowing where to jump to. Well, what if you're not even there yet? Like you just say, hey, I hate my job, my career. I'm not making enough money, or I'm not, I like what I'm doing, or, I'm not satisfied with my relationships. What could be the advice you can give to people in that situation?
Yeah. I think the first thing to kind of bring awareness to is what's going on in your single right now. As you mentioned right now, you're talking about how somebody might not be in the right relationship, or somebody might not be making the amount of money, or their business or their job, they hate their job, or whatever the case might be, recognizing what those emotions are. So those emotions might be fear, they might be doubt, they might be not enoughness, they might be sadness. So recognizing those emotions are important. And then recognizing that the more time I spend in those emotions, so we're not dismissing the emotions, we're actually acknowledging those emotions because they serve a purpose. But then taking a look at those emotions and being like, wait a second, the more time I spend in those particular emotions, the more time I'm spending on sadness, on depression, on feeling bad for myself, on feeling not worthy, not enough, scarcity, any of those things, well, I'm going to pull into my experience more of those things. The universe is going to give me more of the things that those emotions bring. In a way, I like to think about it is everybody has an energetic field, right? So my energetic field, depending on, where I am and how big I feel or how small I feel or what frequency of emotions I have, we are constantly filling up our energetic field with different emotions. So if I'm sitting there and completely unhappy about my job, my relationship, my health, and I'm constantly feeling those emotions, while they are valid and they can be validated, and we should acknowledge them at the same time, the more we do that, we're pouring all of that into our energetic field. So if you've been in a negative emotion around life, relationships, health, whatever, for a long time, your dominant emotion is stressed out, not enough, whatever. So if you want to experience something different, you have to come to realization that this is where my addiction has been. I've been addicted to all these other negative emotions, and there's usually a gain in there, not to make it too complicated. But there's usually a reason why we are hooked on these negative emotions. Some of it is chemical, like in your body. It's like an actual addiction. And I can say this because I have a I have a neurology background, so I know all the transmitters that start to get engaged when you are feeding it the thing that your body is literally like an addiction. So how do I mind this? Well, one, you recognize that those emotions were no longer working for you. Two, takes us back to the very first step of a quantum leap, which is if I don't want to feel sad and scarcity and not enough anymore, if I'm sick and tired of it, well, what is it that I'd like to experience instead? And that might look like joy, it might be gratitude, it might be a beautiful relationship. And people was and obviously based on just this short conversation, you can probably tell, I will tell everybody your very first step is having a vision for where you want to land. But some people will go, well, I don't know what my vision is. I'm in a job that I don't like. I'm in a relationship I don't like. And I would tell them, you do know. You're pretending not to know, because if you're pretending not to know, then you can keep feeling all those old emotions and you can stay stuck, and you can be safe, and you can sort of be comfortable, even though on the surface it's, no, I'm not comfortable. I want to jump. I want to do something different. So I encourage people to write maybe 3 things that they want to experience in the category they're looking to make a change in, whether it's the job, whether it's the relationship, it's health. Just jot down 3 bullet points. I want this house. I want a job that feels like this. I want more love in my relationship. That's it. Just start with 3 bullet points that feels like so impossible for you to achieve. And then every day when you look at it and you get internal about the things you want to experience, you can start to expand on it. Okay, if I put down I want a house, then I'm going to expand. Well, what kind of a house? I wonder if it would be mountain or it'd be in the ocean. I wonder if it'd be in this neighborhood or that neighborhood. If I put down I want to experience more in love and my relationship, well, let's expand it. What does that look like? Does it look like holding hands? Does it look like intimacy? What does that look like in a relationship to experience more love? A good job? Okay, well, let's expand it. What's a good job? Does it have to do with how much money you make? Does it have to do with your, people that you work with? So start small and expand on it every day. And ultimately you're going to end up hopefully spending more time in that vision and less time feeling stuck or not enough in the things that are not working.
Oh, you definitely sound very knowledgeable about the something, in and out. This is really fabulous. I'm really enjoying this because I love like the stuff of like law of attraction, always looking to learn more about it. As I said, I've read books and done programs and coaching. And, to me, one of the older people that I know from a long time ago was Neville Goddard. It's all about, like the power. You talked about like the secret is in the emotion. And he wrote that book, I think it was like 100 years ago. And it's so shocking to me that, he has such great information, but still very few people know about it.
I agree. Yeah, I've read a lot of Neville Goddard. The reason it makes sense to me, like he says it, law of attraction says it, Joe Dispenza, like all these people are recognizing the importance of emotion. And when I look at it with my neurology background, I remember studying at Berkeley and starting to put two and two together. Wait a second. There's the left side of the brain that creates the logical pathways for what you're about to accomplish for your actions. There's the right side of the brain connected to the limbic system, which is your emotions, right? Like right side, the creativity, and the limbic system, which is in expressing emotions and feeling the emotions. So what activates your radicular activating system, the whole story of once you see a red Ferrari or once you're looking for a red car, you're going to see the red car. That's your radicular system. I think this is very overused and people don't understand the mechanics of how it works. But ultimately, the reticular activating system is activated if you have the left side of the brain, which is I want the car, and the right side of the brain that says when I sit in the car, I will feel this way, or the excitement of the car. And this goes for anything. It goes for a relationship, it goes for health, it goes for all of those things. So it's almost everything that I teach in my community or in my coaching container, it engages the nervous system, right? It engages the nervous system. It's, it's the idea is to wire your brain for that unreasonable vision of life you have, so that unreasonable vision no longer feels unsafe. And that feels like your nervous system goes, oh, I can do that. There's nothing wrong with being unreasonable. That now feels common and predictable and familiar.
So can you maybe explain to us, like, what is like the subconscious beliefs that had to do with entrepreneur success, like running a successful business?
Oh my gosh, everything. I have to 3 days and a half to cover this. I think it's everything, because majority of the entrepreneurs, and I have masterminds and I coach entrepreneurs all day, every day. And I think especially when you're successful or when you've had some level of success in your business, you're going to start to realize that one of the biggest ways that a business owner gets stuck, or an entrepreneur service provider gets stuck, a coach gets stuck, is this idea or this belief system that I have to work hard to make a certain level of success happen. That it's going to require a level of sacrifice or struggle in order for me to be successful. And majority of the time, this is something that's been passed on to us from our parents. Another subconscious belief system that I see with specific to entrepreneurs, very common in our space, business owners, coaches, is that I'm not enough. And so the business just becomes a way to create something that shows the world, shows the 13-year-old bully, that was in our high school, in our middle school or whatever, that I am enough. Look at me. Look at this validation. Look at this amount of money. Look at the amount of people that I'm helping. So, you know, unhooking from those negative emotions as you build your business would be important. What if you built a business instead of, I never want to be in poverty or I never want to experience scarcity? What if you're building a business that is purely service and love oriented? What if you build a business? I mean, I can tell you the energy with which you approach your business or the actions you take in your business, the to-do list, the energy with which you approach them is going to determine the success of your business. So you and I could be doing this list of 10 things for our businesses that are exactly the same. But if one of us is approaching that list with a sense of abundance and confidence and provided for already, would get completely different results in the business than the person who approaches that list with scarcity and not enoughness and having to show worth, right?
Oh, that's really awesome. I mean, you touched upon like quantum physics. How does quantum physics intersect with mindset strategies in your practice?
Yeah, I think let's define what's a quantum leap, because I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. To a quantum leap in quantum physics is when a particle moves from one layer to the next layer, right? You may remember this from high school or whenever we learned this, maybe in college, first year of college. A particle moves from one layer to the next layer. That's a quantum jump. This particular quantum jump from a quantum physics perspective does not require more work. Like the particle does not have to work more, but what it does require is a different energetic state. So that means if you're looking to quantum leap into another reality, right? If you wanted to, your business is doing this, you want to do 10x your business, which seems really unreasonable, right? Step one. If you're looking to do that, perhaps it doesn't require more work. Perhaps it actually just requires a different energetic state. What if I'm in a different state? Then maybe I can 10x with so much more ease than, sitting where my business is and approaching it from the same energetic state that I have been approaching. So that's kind of the intersection between the quantum, that for me at least, or the foundation of everything I teach, is how do you quantum leap in your life, in your business, in your relationship, and do it with so much ease? Well, it's going to take a bit of retraining of your nervous system. It's definitely going to take a lot of vision work, a lot of identity work. Who do you need to become in the process to be able to shift your energy to ultimately be able to quantum leap to that next level?
And so you talked about, like shifting your energy. Can you maybe give some like practical steps that the audience can maybe shift their energies in a way?
In a practical way? Yeah, absolutely. So let me first explain maybe the difference, and then we can get into what are some practical things that you could be doing. So I use this example a lot. If I bring a cup of coffee to my husband, his favorite cup of coffee to my husband, and if I make that coffee when my heart is full of love and gratitude, my heart is open, my heart is full of gratitude, full of love and joy. Maybe we just came back from vacation. Maybe we had a great time together. And I bring him that coffee, no facial expressions, no tone, no words are being said. Just give him the coffee and he takes the coffee. Now, let's say another experience where same cup of coffee, I bring it over to him, no facial expressions, no tone, no words spoken. The only difference is this time I bring him the coffee, but I'm feeling resentful and angry and upset about something that he did or said or whatever the night before, right? I think we can all agree that definitely my experience of bringing coffee to my husband would be wildly different between scenario 1 and scenario 2. Definitely, the experience of him would be wildly different between scenario 1 and scenario 2. And if you've studied the water molecule study, that the name of the doctor is skipping my mind, but you study that, you know that the coffee itself is going to be wildly different from a molecular perspective when I fill it up with resentment and when I fill it up with love. So the outcome of this gesture is wildly different. And that is the difference between the energetics of things, right? So when I say shift the energetics, and that's kind of what I'm talking about. Now, if I were to come on this podcast and I was feeling insecure, or if I was feeling not enough or scarcity, or what is Daniel going to think about me? Is he going to like me or whatever? I'm here to prove myself. Well, both you and I would have a completely different outcome of this podcast, including the audience, the ripple effect of everybody listening or watching this. But what if I showed up to this podcast and I said, wait a second, I'm going to have my heart open. I'm going to be as open as and I'm here to serve everybody who's listening in. And I'm here to, I'm approaching this podcast, maybe 5 minutes before the podcast, I get into gratitude or into love or joy. Well, the outcome is going to look completely different for everybody involved. So how do we do this from a practical perspective? Well, I think one is to recognize that, and this is my favorite thing to do, is especially before an event, a scenario, a meeting, answering an email, getting started with my day, sitting down with my children, going on a date with my husband, whatever the case is, prior to that, setting an intention of tapping into what gratitude might feel like. So if I'm going on a date, if I'm filled up with gratitude and wholeness, well, both my husband and I are going to have a different experience. If I'm sitting down with my children and my heart is filled up with gratitude for having this time to sit down with them, they're going to experience me differently. So it's reframing your experiences with the things that you want to experience. And one of the things that's a non-negotiable in my day, like when I wake up in the morning, there are always 2 questions I ask myself that help me frame what I want to experience in that particular day. One of the questions is, what do I want to experience? What do I want to experience today? And the second question is, what needs to be eliminated today? So it might be my need for being liked. It might be my tendency to procrastinate. It might be a piece of clothing. Like, what needs to go today in order for me to tap into the greatest version of myself?
Now, I was reading, a little about you online, and I saw that you have a 1-week-month lifestyle model.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about that? Who's it really for?
Yeah. So I have this is something that I tapped into a few years ago. So a bit about my story is that time when I was in the closet, I was working extremely hard. Even though I had people that were working in my business, I wasn't hitting the goals that I wanted, even though my business was successful. And I couldn't really leave my office. I couldn't leave my business. If I left, I would have to come back and, put down some fires or work on my numbers and get things up again. And in those moments, I recognized that I had to do things differently. So part of my vision that in those moments in the closet was to transition my business into a part-time $1 million business. This was just an idea that came to me while I was in the depth of sort of despair. And I thought to myself, okay, completely unreasonable, completely crazy. But you know what? It's a vision I'm going to say yes to. So I walked out of the closet, continued to say yes to that vision. And so I was able to work about 20 hours a week, generate $1 million business. And then from there, tapped into 3 other businesses that were generating multiple 7 figures. So when I did that, I learned that I could collapse time. I could do less work and actually generate more. It's something that was so outside of what I had understood before. Because before, from my background and my parents and everybody else that I'd experienced, the more you work, the more money you make, the more it was always having to do more. And obviously, in a human body, there's only so much you could be doing. And there usually is a cap on these businesses. So I was committed to finding a way where I would generate more in a less amount of time. So my first dabble into this collapsing time situation was when I decided I was going to take my business and make it a part-time $1 million business instead of overtime and barely making 7 figures. So it started there, and it was an experiment, really. And I was able to do that. I transitioned my business in the first year and then opened up 3 other locations. Then fast forward, once I sold my business, life changed, all of these things. In the past few years, I thought to myself, well, back up. Once I got divorced, I had 1 week off, all right, where my kids were with their dad. So I thought, what am I going to do in this 1 week? I was working and I was overworking because now I didn't have the kids. And so I was working even more. And I made a decision to take that 1 week completely off. And I looked at my numbers and I thought, wait a second, I'm actually way more productive in those 3 weeks and generating more profitability while working less and taking a whole week off. Then I thought, what if I wonder if I can squeeze all of this in 1 week. And so what I learned in the process was one week a month lifestyle was born. And second, I made the recognition that it had so much more to do with my identity, my mindset, and how I thought a business should run, profitability, all of those things. It had so much more to do with the energetics of it than anything else. For me to be able to create a lifestyle that's a 1 week a month lifestyle, I had to really figure out what was holding me back and what was hooking me on to working harder and harder instead of having ease in my businesses and in my life. And I want to be clear, it's not for everybody. It's probably not the best branding, the 1 week a month lifestyle, because when you say it, people are like, I don't want that. I just want to take Fridays off, or I just want to. It's what your version of freedom looks like for you. For some people, it's just being home with our family on time. For some people, it's having the presence with their family once they're done with their business or their job. For some people, it's taking Fridays off or having the ability to take an extended vacation. So it's just really a freedom-based lifestyle.
I want to touch upon what you said like a few minutes ago, because it seems always a little bit paradoxical. Because you said like most people believe like in order to make more money, you got to work more hours. Like you said, if you want to have another business, this means more time. But then you're saying exact opposite. Like how exactly does that work? Like how is it possible? You know what I mean? Like logically possible that people working less hours and being more productive.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in the entrepreneurial world, it's actually very much possible. And I'll tell you, having to work with multiple 7-figure entrepreneurs, I can tell you that there's so much more ease when you're at that level in terms of, and there's so much less work that you'll be doing than when you are running a Mickey Mouse operation from a business perspective purely. So if I'm over here and I'm just getting started on my business, I have to start to think like the next level version of myself. So I have to see my business as how I can scale this business and how I can grow this business while working from the version of myself that's already created the freedom. So you're absolutely right. The conflict here is in the thought process. So the business owner, the average person, the entrepreneur, if I believe I have to work really hard to make something happen, then that's exactly what happens. But if I can shift the belief system, then perhaps I will be presented with opportunities that are going to generate more profitability without me having to hustle, quote unquote, or overwork to generate that. And that's exactly what happened to me. Is and in this process, I eliminated a whole bunch of businesses and things. So now, once I shifted the belief system, now I had ideas, inspiration that would come to me that generated, in this one particular case, I think double the amount of money I was making by cutting my hours in half. But that idea wouldn't come to me unless I shifted the belief system.
And do you, I guess, apply the same type of concept like in relationships? I mean, if somebody's like in a really bad relationship or they're like really miserable and you're saying like, well, by shifting their beliefs, there's new possibilities come up of being in a better relationship.
1,000%. I mean, if you imagine you go out there and you think there are no good women out there, or if your belief system is there's no good men out there, then that's exactly what you're going to experience. So if you think you have to hustle, you're going to create opportunities where you have to hustle. You think there are no good women out there, you're going to be approached by women that are no good. So I think the belief system really runs our external reality.
Wow. I agree with you wholeheartedly. That's really amazing. I want to also talk to you a little bit about, you have a book, right? Called Elevate Your Life.
I have a book on Elevate Your Life. It's really a book I've written maybe about a decade, 9, 10 years ago. I don't know. It's an old book. I'm actually working on a book right now that's called 1 Week a Month Lifestyle. So that's my new thing.
Wow, that's great. I'm definitely excited about that. It sounds really interesting. But I was interested in that book because you collaborated with Michael Beckwith, right? Like he wrote the foreword for the book, I believe, or?
Yes, he did. Yeah.
What was it like working with him? I mean, you just asked him to write the foreword because, I mean, he's like a celebrity in his own right.
Yeah, absolutely. He's incredible. He's a great human being. I have studied his work. At the time I am still, but in Southern California, and his church is in LA. The Agape Center is in LA, and I would go every once in a while. And let me tell you, the fact that he said yes to it is just another one of those experiences where I thought to myself, I'm going to get it was a belief system flip of, I'm going to have Michael Beckwith write the foreword for my book. And that's how it all started. I just built certainty around the belief system that was going to happen. And I can't say it was difficult to do. I think I asked him, he gave me information of his assistant, sent an email, and kind of got the conversation going, and he knew about the book, and he met with, and so wrote the foreword.
That's really amazing. Can you maybe give us, I mean, now you tell us a little bit about like the theory about like your program and stuff. Can you maybe share a little bit about some of the stories? Like you're saying, like you help people have like $1 million businesses. Can you maybe share a little bit about that so we can better understand, like from a practical perspective, what that looked like with some of like your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So probably one of my favorite stories, this entrepreneur business owner that I work with, and she's an active member of my 1 Week a Month mastermind. When she first started with me, her name is Yamira. And when she first started, she was working, I think, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. She also would think about and stress about her business on all the other days of the week, on Saturday and Sunday. She was really like a full-time working, and she was generating decent profits. And once she started with me, we started to kind of work on the systems in place, because I am a business consultant first. So we go through and we're like, what's the sales process? What's the funnel? And kind of help her clean all of that up. And she had a jump in her income when we did that. But the biggest jump came into play when we started to figure out what was in the way. Like, what were the subconscious belief systems that were holding her back? What was the vision, the unreasonable vision that she had for the future of her business? And shortly after that, I think, don't quote me on the timelines, but I think it was like 3 to 4 months or so. She's on video kind of describing in a testimonial, so she can be more accurate about it. I'm not good with details. But anyways, 4 months into it, she was able to double her business, and she had cut her hours to a point where she would only work, I think it was 2 half days and 1 full day at the time. So now she's generating, double the amount of money she was generating in half the time that she was putting into her business. And this is a story that's actually extremely common in our one week a month mastermind, because that's literally what we're about. If you're already in business, then you come into the mastermind and then you learn, okay, who do I show up as in order to be able to tap into that level of freedom? I have another entrepreneur that started with me a while ago and was able to first, her entire goal was, I'm going to take this business and I'm going to take it to this next level, which she did in a shorter period of time. But she would have done that on her own without the concepts of 1 week a month mastermind. Then once she joined the mastermind, she had the ability to open up the vision first of opening up 2 other locations. And she was able to do that. She scaled her businesses, opened up 2 other locations. And at the same time, she did it with ease. So she wasn't like fully killing herself while she was scaling and duplicating her businesses. And in her case, it happens to be a brick and mortar. So these concepts will apply: brick and mortar, coaches, service providers, any kind of business, really, hair salons, all of it.
And do you have any examples of like relationships that the people were able to get in through your?
This is from one of my favorites inside of Elevate Club. So Elevate Club is like kind of the basic community that we have, where we focus on 3 areas: health, wealth, and area of connection. So connection is relationship with yourself, relationship with others. We've had people find love because they found their own self-limiting process. They found how their old patterns were showing up in creating this barrier between them and their future husband or their future wife. So we've had people find love. We've had people create peace around narcissistic relationships. So if there's a toxic relationship, they have been able to create peace around that. That's obviously a lot more complicated, but there's tons of examples like that in Elevate Club.
Wow, that's really really amazing. You're kind of blowing me away with all this. I mean, can you tell us a little bit about like how does like your background in neurology and chiropractic help you with through who you are today?
I think the neurology background really helps me get an understanding of the woo, right? Like the woo that's out there of manifesting the things and whatever. I can really understand it from a neurological perspective. And I think, I don't know, I feel I'm a really good teacher in making things really simple and understandable and practical for people. So I think that's helped me in that sense. And in terms of chiropractic specifically, what made me fall in love with chiropractic was the fact that I learned what chiropractic was about is that your body has the ability to heal itself. As long as you remove the things that are in the way, right? Remove the toxins, remove the subluxations, remove the things that are in the way, then the body has the ability to heal itself. That was really powerful to me because if you take that concept and you expand on it in life, which I tend to philosophize on these things, you take that concept and you expand on it where it goes, okay, well, if this is the life I want to experience, instead of pushing and trying to push the boulder up the hill, all I have to do is go, what's in the way? What's stopping me from getting there? So that might be thoughts, that might be people in my life, that might be certain environment, that might be my to-do list, that might be the job I'm in. So there was a lot of elimination in the process that I learned from this very simple but powerful chiropractic principle.
Now I wanted to ask you about this. It's something I'm curious about, like with the whole industry, like the self-help industry. Because I mean, you talked a lot about shifting beliefs, and so does people like Neville Garden and stuff. And does that mean once people shift the beliefs, the money just shows up, or do you actually still have to take action, work hard?
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know about working hard. I don't like that, but
I really appreciate it.
But so in the 4 steps that I teach, which we won't have time to go through today, but if anyone's interested in the conversations resonating with them, they can message me on social media, Instagram, anywhere. And I'm happy to send them a training on the full, it's a 90-minute training on the 4 steps of a quantum leap. But just to tell you in terms of working or taking action, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think you can I haven't figured out how to sit on the couch, put my feet up, nor do I want to. But I haven't figured out how to do that and just have things fall into place. You're not going to meet anybody. If you're looking for a relationship, you're not going to make any money if you're not making the connections, right? But I will say that taking action is definitely part of creating a quantum leap and bringing that unreasonable vision into your life. However, it's got to be the right kind of action, right? Most people are taking scarcity-based actions, which basically means it's filled up with fear. And again, kind of going back to the energetics with which you take action. If I'm taking action from a place of scarcity or fear, the results are not going to be there. And then there's the kind of actions that are unreasonable actions, which is they're unreasonable for your current reality. They're unreasonable for your current identity. So if my current identity is I don't like to go on dates, or if my current identity is I don't know, I have to work really hard. I have to be in my business in order for it to make money. If that's part of the identity and part of the belief system, well, the actions I would be taking are based on that identity. If I think I'm a fit person, I'm going to go to the gym. If I think I'm a good mom, I'm going to do things that are going to make me feel like a good mom. So the identity oftentimes are going to drive the behavior of the individual, which basically means, okay, if I'm tapped into the identity of the unreasonable vision for myself, I'm going to take actions that are in more alignment with where I am headed into that unreasonable life, into that relationship. So I might take actions that are unreasonable for where I'm at. I might end up on more dates. I might end up on a dating website. I might end up, doing the things that seem unreasonable for my current identity.
So can I ask you, I mean, since like you share with us about, you have this wonderful life and life has improved. And you're also now like working with other people. What inspired you to want to help other people? Because honestly, most people I've met, they only care about themselves. So I'm curious to know what's inspiring, because that's the name of our podcast is Inspire and Impact. So I'm curious to know what inspires you to want to help other people versus being selfish, just caring about yourself.
Well, I think for me, it's a funny story. When I was 2.5, not really funny, but when I was 2.5, I had a little brother who passed away. So this is the most vivid, the earliest childhood memory that I have. And because it was a traumatic experience, but looking back, it was in those moments where I would watch my parents suffer and go through the trauma of losing a child. And I remember my mom crying uncontrollably. And for me, I was trying to fix her. I was trying to take her food or my toy to try to help her take the pain away from her. And so, I think that was pivotal in my life journey, my soul's journey, this desire for helping people, this desire for people to recognizing their potential, this desire to have, and this ability to see people's potential. When I see Daniel, I see you as your full potential. I see no limitations, or I can recognize the limitations and bring them to your attention. So I think that was really the start of everything for me. Everything I have done since then, whether it was me as a chiropractor, whether it was me as a business consultant, whether it's me in my role right now as I facilitate these retreats and masterclasses and masterminds and things like that, the underlying foundation has always been helping more people recognize their unlimited potential and then now giving them permission to dream bigger. But I think it started when I was 2.5.
Wow, that's really amazing. And what impact or legacy would you like to have in the world through all the work that you do?
I know it sounds cliche, but I have journals from when I'm 16 years old where I wrote down things like, I want to make a dent in the universe. And now it's evolved and changed. Now I feel like if I raise great children, good human beings, if I can make a small impact in one person's life because they listen to this or they watch this, if my clients are successful, any of those things, I think those are continuations of my legacy because I believe in the ripple effects too.
Okay, and so we're kind of running out of time of the podcast. Is there any like final thoughts or any other topics you want to discuss, talk with the audience with?
No, I think if this resonates, just my favorite thing to do is to connect with people, personally. So this resonates with anyone, I'm happy to connect with them. I'm more specifically on Instagram, but really anywhere on social media is where I have a little bit of space, and would love to connect, hear what you thought about this conversation. And if you want the 4 steps to a quantum leap, just mention Daniel's name and I'm happy to send over that training too.
Well, Dr. Nona, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing us with your experiences and your wisdom. And this program is definitely very interesting. I myself am interested in checking it out. It sounds really spectacular. I mean, that they're able to have so much success in every area of your life. I mean, not that many people can honestly say that. Honestly, most people I've met, they're successful in one area in their life and not in the others. Like they're good in business, but not in relationships, or they have a relationship and not business. But it's very interesting that, you cover all those bases. So that's really amazing. So thank you so much again for coming on and sharing all your wisdom with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.